My name is Angela Hughes, and for 31 years, I lived in a family where daughters were never meant to stay. 3 weeks ago, after our parents passed away, my younger sister forced me out of the house. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and said, "Dad made it clear a long time ago. The house belongs to me. You were never part of the plan." Then she changed the locks. Just like that. The house I grew up in. The house where I spent nearly 2 years caring for our dying mother while my sister only showed up when it was convenient for her. The house where I held Mom's hand through endless hospital visits while she scrolled through her phone, complaining about being bored. That house became somewhere I no longer belonged. She didn't even wait for me to pack. My clothes, my books, even the photo albums Mom kept, everything was dumped onto the front lawn like trash. And as I stood there, watching strangers slow down to stare, she looked at me and said something I will never forget. "You've always been a burden, Angela. This just makes it official. Because in my father's eyes, that's all a daughter was ever meant to be. Temporary, replaceable, forgettable." But here's what my sister didn't know. Our mother had been preparing for this moment. For years. 8 years of quiet decisions. 8 years of meetings no one questioned. 8 years of building something no one, not even my father, could control. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? What's the weather like where you are? This is a fictional story, with a few details shaped with the help of AI to make it more vivid, but every emotion you're hearing, that part is real. To understand what my sister did, you first have to understand the Hughes family. My father, Daniel Hughes, believed in one simple rule: sons carry the legacy, daughters leave it behind. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't shout or insult. He just made his priorities clear. He was a successful property developer, well off enough to buy us a 5-bedroom home in a quiet suburb outside Portland. Nice neighborhood, clean streets, good schools, and a garage workshop where he spent weekends teaching my sister about business deals and investments, while I stayed inside, helping my mother prepare meals. My mother, Eleanor Hughes, was the quiet heart of our home. She planted roses in the backyard, rows and rows of them, tending to them every morning like they were something sacred. She had a way of softening my father's indifference, of making his silence feel less like rejection. But my sister, Chloe, 4 years younger than me, absorbed his beliefs completely. When she graduated, Dad paid for her degree in finance at a private university. When she decided to start her own business, he introduced her to every contact he had. But when I said I wanted to become a nurse, he barely looked up. "Why waste money?" he said. "You'll just end up taking care of a family anyway." So I did it on my own. Scholarships, night shifts, double shifts at a cafe. I paid for everything myself. And I remember, one night, after dinner, when my father spent an hour praising Chloe's first successful deal and barely acknowledged that I had been accepted into my program, my mother pulled me aside. She held my hand tightly and whispered, "I've taken care of it." I didn't understand what she meant. I thought it was just something mothers say, to comfort daughters who are used to being overlooked. I had no idea that she had already started changing everything. I remember that night clearly. It was 8 years ago. My mother pulled me aside after dinner, right after my father spent nearly an hour praising Chloe's first successful investment deal, barely even glancing at me when I mentioned getting accepted into my nursing program. She took my hand, her grip tighter than usual. "I've taken care of you," she whispered. "You won't understand now, but I have." I didn't understand at all. I thought it was just something a mother says when she knows her daughter feels invisible. I had no idea that earlier that same day, she had been sitting in a quiet office downtown with a lawyer named Margaret Hale, signing documents that would change everything about my future. 2 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I still remember the moment I found out. I was halfway through a shift at Oak Ridge Care Center when my phone lit up with my father's name. He never called me at work. In fact, he rarely called me at all. "Your mother is sick," he said, his voice flat. "You need to come home. Not we need you. Just you." Like it was my responsibility. Like it had always been. I packed my things within a week and moved back into the house. I switched to night shifts so I could spend my days with her. Chemotherapy appointments, radiation sessions, endless hospital visits. Watching her grow weaker, smaller, quieter. My income dropped. My life paused. But none of that mattered. She was my mother. Chloe visited 3 times in 2 years. 3. Each visit lasted less than an hour. She would arrive in tailored suits, designer heels clicking across the floor, kiss Mom lightly on the cheek, check her phone, and leave before the tea even cooled. Her boyfriend, Ethan, came once. He spent most of the visit taking pictures of the house, talking about potential upgrades, barely acknowledging my mother lying in bed just a few feet away. My father never once thanked me. In his mind, I wasn't sacrificing anything. I was just doing what daughters were supposed to do. But my mother saw everything. She started going out once a month. A bit of paperwork. She told me insurance things. I would drive her to an office in downtown Portland, wait in the car, then take her home. And every time she came out of that building, she looked lighter, like she had finally set down something heavy she'd been carrying for years. One night, as I helped her into bed, she held my hand again. "You're such a good girl, Angela," she said softly. "No matter what happens, remember this. You did everything right. You showed up. That matters more than anything." I thought she was talking about the cancer. She wasn't. "You need to understand something about Chloe and the life she built." She and Ethan lived in a sleek modern home in Seattle, in a neighborhood where everything looked curated, expensive, and slightly untouchable. Chloe liked to call herself an entrepreneur, but most of what I saw were carefully staged photos online, luxury dinners, and captions about success and grind. When she looked at me, it wasn't with hatred. It was worse than that. It was like I didn't exist. Like I was background noise. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, the last one where Mom was still strong enough to cook. Chloe looked at me across the table and smiled in that polished, distant way. "Have you ever thought about doing something bigger?" she asked. "You can't spend your whole life cleaning up after people." My mother's hand tightened around her fork. "I'm a registered nurse," I said quietly. "I take care of people." Chloe let out a soft laugh. "Of course you do." But the moment that stayed with me didn't happen at the table. It happened later that night. I went into the kitchen for a glass of water and heard voices in the hallway. "Chloe and Ethan. Don't worry about her," Chloe said. "Dad's made it clear for years. Everything's coming to me. She's getting nothing." There was a pause. "She's just here to play caretaker until Mom's gone," she continued. "After that, she'll disappear back into whatever small life she came from." Ethan's voice dropped lower. "Good," he said. "We need this. Chloe. We really need this." Something in his tone didn't match the life they were pretending to live. It wasn't confidence. It was desperation. I stood there, frozen, my hand wrapped around the glass, listening to every word, Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong. 6 weeks ago, my mother was declared cancer-free. I remember sitting in the oncologist's office, crying in a way I hadn't allowed myself to for 2 years. She had made it. After everything. She had survived. We went out to celebrate at her favorite little cafe. And for the first time in years, she ordered a glass of champagne. "I want to visit my mother," she said suddenly, smiling. "It's been too long." She meant my grandmother, who lived in a care facility just outside the city. "Your father's been saying he'll take me for months," she added. "I think it's time we just go." 4 weeks ago. They finally did. They never came back. A truck driver fell asleep on the highway. The police said it was instant. They always say that. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if anyone ever says anything else. I was working a night shift when my phone rang. The door opened without resistance. My key worked perfectly now. I had changed the locks weeks ago, quietly reclaiming what had always been mine. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, letting the silence settle around me. This was where I had made my mother tea countless times, where I had stood beside her through fear, through pain, through nights that felt endless. The house was still. Chloe had left it relatively clean when she moved out, whether it was guilt or simply a lack of time. I didn't know. But my mother was still everywhere. Her recipe cards in the drawer, her glasses on the nightstand, her robe hanging in the closet like she might come back for it. I walked into her bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. That's when I noticed it. A small photo album I had never seen before. I opened it slowly. Inside were photographs of me, from the very beginning, my first steps, my first day of school, graduation, moments I barely remembered, all carefully preserved. On the first page, in her handwriting, it said, "For my bravest girl." My grandmother sat beside me. She worked on that during chemo. She said softly, when she couldn't sleep, she said it helped her remember the good things. I held the album against my chest, and this time, when I cried, it wasn't grief, it was gratitude. 6 months later, I made a decision I had been putting off for years. I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program. It had always been my dream, to do more than bedside care, to diagnose, to treat, to make a deeper difference. But it had never felt possible, not with the cost, not with the life I was trying to survive. Now, it was. I used part of the trust to pay for tuition and books, following the plan my advisor had laid out. The rest stayed invested. Growing quietly, I kept working at Oak Ridge, just part-time now. I wasn't ready to leave the patients who had become part of my life. Melissa and I eventually found an apartment together near the hospital. 2 bedrooms, a small balcony. I started growing roses in pots. She joked that living alone was overrated. I said sharing rent made more sense. We both knew it was more than that. Every Sunday, my grandmother called. She told me stories about my mother as a child, about who she was before life softened her, shaped her, quieted her. I recorded those calls, saving them like something fragile and irreplaceable. As for the house, I decided to rent it. A young family moved in. The wife was a nurse from Oak Ridge, her husband kind, their 2 daughters full of life. The older one asked if she could take care of the garden. I said yes. That year, I said yes to many things. To rest, to opportunity, to the slow realization that I was worth more than I had been taught to believe. My mother didn't just leave me money, she gave me permission. Permission to believe I deserved a life that wasn't built on sacrifice alone. I've thought a lot about Chloe, not to excuse her. There is no excuse for how she treated me, but to understand. She grew up being told she was entitled to everything. She didn't have to earn it. The world was already hers. So she never learned what it meant to value something. Or someone. Psychologists call it entitlement. The belief that you deserve things without effort. It isn't something you're born with. It's something you're taught. And once it takes root, it's hard to unlearn, because letting go of it means facing the truth that you were never as special as you were told. Chloe isn't a monster. She's the result of a system that told her she mattered more. And when that belief collapsed, she didn't know how to stand without it. I don't know if she'll ever change. I hope she does. But I also know that it's not my responsibility to fix her. My responsibility is to myself, to protect my peace, to build a life that reflects what my mother believed I deserved, and to remember that walking away from people who hurt you is not cruelty. It's survival. If you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough by the very people who should have loved you, I want you to hear this. They were wrong. You were always enough. Sometimes love protects us in ways we don't see. And sometimes we have to learn to protect ourselves. That's what my mother gave me. And that's what I finally understood. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me about someone who protected you, or someone you wish had. And if you want more stories like this, stay with me. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know. I didn't open the letter that night. Instead, I called the only person I could think of, Melissa Carter. She had been my supervisor at Oak Ridge for 3 years. But more than that, she was someone who saw me clearly when I couldn't see myself. She arrived in less than 30 minutes. No questions, no hesitation. "Get in," she said softly. "You're staying with me." Her apartment was small but warm. 2 bedrooms in a quiet complex. Nothing fancy, but safe. And that was enough. When she handed me tea and a blanket, everything I had been holding back finally broke. I cried in a way I hadn't since the night I lost my parents. Later, when the storm inside me settled, I took out the letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. She must have written it during chemo. "My dearest Angela, if you're reading this, then what I feared has already happened. Your father and your sister have shown you who they are. I want you to know something. I saw it. I always saw it. I tried to change your father. I truly did. But I couldn't. What I could do was protect you. There is a lawyer, Margaret Hale, at Hale and Whitmore in downtown Portland. She has everything. All the documents, all the arrangements, everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. Angela, you were never a burden, not for a single moment. You are the best thing I have ever done. I love you more than anything good in this world." Mom, I read it once, then again, and again, until the words stopped feeling unreal and started settling somewhere deep inside me. Then I called the number at the bottom. Hale and Whitmore was exactly what you'd expect. Old brick building, polished brass nameplates, floors that creaked with history. I felt out of place the moment I walked in. But the receptionist smiled. And moments later, I was led into a quiet office filled with books and soft light. Margaret Hale stood to greet me. She wasn't what I expected. Late 50s, silver hair, precise, composed, but her eyes were warm. "Angela," she said, "I've been waiting for your call. That almost broke me. She left me a letter." I said, "She said you had something for me." Margaret gestured for me to sit. "I do," she said. "Your mother and I worked together for 8 years. 8 years. The same amount of time she had hinted at before. She knew." Margaret continued. "She knew what your father intended. She knew your sister would inherit everything under his control. My chest tightened. And she couldn't change that. She said, but she could plan around it? What does that mean? It means she created arrangements outside your father's estate. I felt the room shrink around me. Arrangements your sister doesn't know about. And your father never knew about either. I stared at her. What kind of arrangements? The kind you'll understand at the will reading next week. She said calmly. Both wills will be presented together. She paused. But until then, you need to trust me. I nodded slowly. Whatever your sister says. She continued. Don't react. Don't sign anything. Just wait. Why? Her expression softened. Because your mother made sure she would have the final word. 3 days before the will reading. Chloe called. It was late. I was sitting in Melissa's kitchen, pretending to read. Her name on my phone made my stomach tighten. I answered anyway. Angela, she said. Her voice smooth, friendly, worse than anger. I've been thinking. She continued. This situation between us, it's not good for anyone. I said nothing. You threw me out of my home 2 days after our parents' funeral, I said finally. I know, she said quickly. I could have handled that better. Almost apologetic. Almost. That's why I'm calling. She continued. I want to fix things. I waited. I had my lawyer prepare an agreement. She said, you sign away any claim to the estate. And I give you $10,000. 10,000. For everything. For years of being overlooked. For 2 years of caring for our mother alone. For every moment I had been made to feel like I didn't matter. Angela, she said, her tone sharpening. Be realistic. You're not getting anything. Dad's will is clear. You'll waste money fighting this. Take the money. Start over. I closed my eyes. Then I said quietly, no. Silence. I'll see you at the will reading. Her voice changed instantly. Cold. You're making a mistake, she said. You'll walk out of that room with nothing, and when you do, you'll regret this. I took a slow breath. Then that's my choice. Another pause. Then she exhaled sharply. Fine, she said. But remember, I tried to be generous. What happens next is on you. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, my hand still shaking, and then I did the only thing I could do. I waited. Have you ever been pushed into signing something by your own family, told you that you didn't deserve fairness, that you should just accept whatever you were given? That kind of helplessness stays with you, if you've ever felt that. I'd really like to hear your story. And if this one speaks to you, this is the moment to stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. The will reading was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday at Hale and Whitmore. The conference room was large, centered around a polished wooden table meant for more people than were actually there. Only 6 of us. Chloe, Ethan, me, Margaret Hale, her assistant, acting as a witness, and then, unexpectedly, my grandmother. Chloe's expression shifted the moment she walked in. I didn't know you were coming, she said. My grandmother, Margaret Whitfield, was 82, but there was nothing fragile about her. She wore a deep blue dress, her silver hair neatly pinned back, and the sapphire ring on her hand caught the light as she took the seat beside me. I was invited, she said simply, by my daughter. Chloe and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. Well, Chloe said after a moment, forcing a smile. The more the better, I guess. Though I don't see why we need to complicate this. Dad's wishes were always clear. Margaret Hale remained composed as she arranged the documents in front of her. Before we begin, she said, You should know that we'll be reviewing 2 wills today. 2, Ethan frowned. Why would that matter? Everything was shared. Not everything. Margaret replied calmly. I felt my grandmother's hand find mine under the table, giving it a quiet, steady squeeze. Chloe adjusted her watch, impatience flickering across her face. Let's just get this over with, she said. Read Dad's will first. Margaret nodded and opened the first folder. Last Will and Testament of Daniel Hughes, dated 14 months ago. The room fell silent. This was it. Exactly what Chloe had been waiting for. Margaret read through the formal sections before reaching the part that mattered. To my daughter, Chloe Hughes. I leave 70% of my personal assets, including my business holdings, vehicles, and my share of all joint financial accounts. Chloe leaned back slightly, satisfaction settling across her face. To my daughter, Angela Hughes. I leave 30% of the remaining personal assets. Ethan let out a quiet breath. 30% of what's left. He muttered. After expenses, that's basically nothing. That's not I started. It's fine. Chloe cut in smoothly. Dad had around 80,000 in liquid assets. You'll still get something. Maybe 25,000. She looked at me like she was being generous. Honestly, that's more than I expected him to leave you. Chloe, my grandmother said quietly. Perhaps you should let the lawyer finish. What's left to finish? Chloe replied, leaning back in her chair. The house was his. The money was his. I'm the primary heir. Angela gets what she gets. Ethan was already pulling out his phone, probably calculating numbers. Margaret's voice cut cleanly through the room. There is more to discuss. Chloe's expression flickered. What do you mean? Daniel Hughes's will represents only part of your parents' estate, Margaret said. Your mother's estate is separate, and significantly larger. The room went still. Chloe stopped smiling. That's not possible, she said sharply. Mom didn't have her own estate. She didn't work. Everything she had came from Dad. That is not correct, Margaret replied evenly. It is correct, Chloe insisted, standing slightly as if that gave her authority. I know my own family. Whatever small savings she had. It doesn't change anything. Margaret closed the first folder and calmly placed her hand on the second. We're about to review what it changes. Dad made his position clear for years, Chloe said, her voice sharpening again. Everything goes to me. You take what you're given and be grateful. She turned to me, and whatever softness had been there before was gone. This is what I was trying to save you from. Angela, sitting here hoping Mom left you something. What exactly were you expecting? Her jewelry? Some old recipes? She let out a quiet laugh. It doesn't matter. The house is still Dad's. The real money is still Dad's. And you. Her eyes swept over me. Dismissive. You're still exactly who you've always been. Chloe, my grandmother said, her voice low but firm. Chloe ignored her. I hope you enjoy figuring things out on your own, she added, because I made sure you have nothing left to fall back on. No house, no support, nothing. Maybe next time you'll make better choices. Ms. Hughes. Margaret Hale's voice cut through the room. Calm, but unmistakably authoritative. Sit down. The command was so unexpected that Chloe actually obeyed, dropping back into her chair. I understand you have strong opinions, Margaret continued evenly. But this is a legal proceeding, not a personal debate. She met Chloe's gaze directly. Your mother's will contains provisions that override your assumptions. If you interrupt again, I will ask you to leave and receive the documents separately. Ethan leaned closer to Chloe, whispering something urgently. She pressed her lips together and stayed silent, though the tension in her jaw was obvious. Margaret reached for the second folder. "Now," she said, "we will address Eleanor Hughes's estate, including a section she specifically requested be read aloud." For a brief, unsettling moment, doubt crept in. Chloe's words echoed in my head. Mom didn't have anything. Everything came from Dad. What if she was right? What if the letter, the lawyer, all of it, was just my mother trying to comfort me? Knowing I would be left with nothing, I glanced down at the watch on my wrist. My mother's watch. The leather strap was worn, the face scratched from years of use. She could have replaced it 100 times over, but she never did. She wore it every single day. What had she really left me? Ethan leaned toward Chloe again, his voice low but urgent. "Maybe she just had a small policy," he murmured. "Life insurance or something. A few thousand at most." "Nothing that changes anything," Chloe whispered back. "Our situation." The phrase caught my attention. What situation? My grandmother's hand tightened around mine, firmer this time, as if she could feel the doubt creeping in. "Angela," she murmured softly. "Just for me. Your mother was the smartest woman I've ever known. Trust her." I looked up at Margaret. She was watching me closely. Her expression calm, almost expectant. "I'm ready," I said. Chloe let out a quiet scoff. "Ready for disappointment," she muttered. Ethan chuckled under his breath. Margaret ignored them. She opened the folder and carefully removed several documents. I could see official seals, notarized stamps, pages filled with dense legal language. "Last will and testament of Eleanor Grace Hughes," she began. "Revised 18 months ago. Witnessed and notarized in Multnomah County." She paused briefly. "The testator was evaluated by Dr. Helen Carter, a board-certified psychiatrist, and declared fully competent at the time of signing." She looked directly at Chloe. "The first item is a letter Mrs. Hughes requested be read aloud." Chloe shifted in her seat. 18 months ago," she said quickly. "That was during chemo. Her judgment wasn't clear." I anticipated that concern. Margaret replied smoothly. "Which is why there is a formal evaluation confirming her full cognitive capacity." She reached into the folder and placed a small USB drive on the table. "There is also a video recording of the signing. Your mother explains each decision in detail. The recording is 32 minutes long and available for review should anyone wish to contest her competency." Ethan went still. Chloe stared at the USB drive as if it might explode. She swallowed. "That's very thorough." "Your mother was meticulous," Margaret said. A faint hint of admiration in her tone. She then lifted a single sheet of paper, cream-colored, familiar. I recognized it instantly. My mother had kept a box of that stationery in her desk, reserved for things that truly mattered. Margaret held it carefully. "And now," she said, "the letter. If you believe my parents made the right choice choosing to protect one child while leaving the other behind, comment Jung. But if you can't support a decision that creates inequality within a family, then comment say, sometimes love is tested not by words, but by how fairly it is given. And the hardest question is, what would you have done in their place to my children?" Margaret began, her voice steady and clear. "If you are hearing this, then I am gone, and the moment I feared has come." My throat tightened. "I love you both," she continued. "I want you to know that first. But love does not make me blind." Chloe went very still. "For years, I watched your father favor one child over the other in ways he didn't even recognize. To him, it was natural. One would lead, one would follow, one would inherit, one would accept. Margaret paused briefly, glancing up at us. "There is more," she said. "Keep reading," Chloe said sharply. Margaret nodded and continued. "And suddenly it felt like my mother's voice was in the room. When Angela was born, your father said, 'Maybe next time we'll have something different.' I held her in my arms and promised myself she would never feel like she came second in my eyes. My chest tightened. I watched her grow up working harder for less recognition. I watched her build her life without help. While others were given every advantage, I couldn't move. I watched her come home and care for me during the hardest years of my life, changing my sheets, holding my hand, staying when it was difficult and exhausting and thankless. Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Chloe visited 3 times in 2 years. The words landed heavily. I do not say this to condemn." The letter continued. "I say it so you understand why I made the choices I did." Ethan shifted beside Chloe. "The assets I leave to Angela are not a reward. They are not favoritism. They are balance. They are what she was always owed." A quiet sound escaped Chloe, something between disbelief and anger. "And if Chloe is hearing this and feels wronged," Margaret read on, "I ask her to consider why she feels entitled to everything. Who taught her that? And what has she done to earn it?" Beyond expectation, Chloe's face had gone pale. Margaret lowered the page slightly. The letter concludes. She said softly, "To my dearest Angela, you were never a burden. You are my heart. Live fully. Be happy. And never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than everything good this world can offer." She folded the paper carefully. "With all my love. Always. Mom." The room fell into complete silence. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. My grandmother quietly placed a tissue in my hand. Margaret let a moment pass before continuing. "Now," she said, "let's review what Eleanor Hughes has left behind." She pulled a document from the folder. "First, the house." Chloe straightened immediately. "That's part of Dad's estate," she said. "It was always in his name." Margaret slid the paper across the table. "Actually, it was not." Chloe grabbed the document, scanning it quickly. "5 years ago," Margaret continued, "your parents transferred full ownership of the property to Eleanor Hughes. That's not possible," Chloe said. "It is," Margaret replied calmly. "Your father was facing a potential legal dispute at the time. Transferring the property protected it from liability." "I never heard anything about that," Chloe said, her voice tightening. "It was resolved privately," Margaret said, "but the transfer remained in place." She placed another document on the table. "This is the official record from Multnomah County. The property, currently valued at approximately $650,000, belonged solely to your mother." Ethan went silent. Chloe stared at the page, her expression shifting. "But that means—" she started. "It means," Margaret said evenly, "your mother had full authority to decide who would receive it. She turned her gaze toward me, and she chose you, Angela." "No," Chloe said quickly. "No, that's not right. That has to be wrong. Dad would never." "Your father believed what he wanted to believe," my grandmother said firmly. "Your mother told him the transfer was temporary. He never questioned it." I stared down at the document. My mother's signature was there. Clear, deliberate. The house I grew up in. The house I had been thrown out of. The house where I had cared for her. It had always been hers. And now? It was mine, Margaret continued, as if she hadn't just turned everything upside down. "There is also the matter of an irrevocable trust." Chloe looked up sharply. What, 8 years ago?" Margaret said. "Your mother established an irrevocable trust with Angela Hughes as the sole beneficiary." Chloe stared at her, stunned. An irrevocable trust, Margaret explained, cannot be changed or dissolved without the consent of the beneficiary. It exists entirely outside the probate process. Margaret continued. 8 years ago. Chloe turned sharply toward my grandmother. You gave her the money, she stammered. You gave Mom that kind of money. My grandmother didn't flinch. I gave my daughter what was mine to give, she said, calmly. What she chose to do with it was her decision. Margaret nodded. The trust was initially funded with a gift of $400,000 from Mrs. Whitfield. She explained. Your mother invested it conservatively over the past 8 years. She glanced down at her notes. The current value is approximately $1.2 million. Ethan made a small, strangled sound. 1.2 million. Chloe repeated slowly. That is correct, Margaret said. And because the trust was established using separate funds, never combined with marital assets, it was never part of your parents' shared estate. Her voice remained steady. It has always belonged to Angela. I couldn't process the number. 1.2 million. My mother, who wore the same worn watch every day, who grew her own flowers, who never spent more than she needed. She had quietly built something that large. For me. This is fraud, Chloe said suddenly, her voice rising. This isn't possible. Dad didn't know about any of this. He would never have agreed. Your father's awareness is irrelevant, Margaret replied evenly. The trust was legally created using funds that were never his. He had no claim to it. Neither do you. The USB drive still sat untouched on the table. 32 minutes of my mother explaining everything. There is one final asset, Margaret said. Chloe's face had gone pale. Ethan's grip on her arm tightened. Your mother held a life insurance policy valued at $500,000, Margaret continued. The sole beneficiary is Angela Hughes. For a moment, I couldn't even react. Life insurance. I hadn't known any of this. She purchased the policy 12 years ago. Margaret said. The premiums were paid from her personal account, funded by annual gifts from your grandmother. Your father was never listed as a beneficiary. But I'm her daughter, Chloe said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm her firstborn. She can't just leave me with nothing. She did not leave you nothing, Margaret replied, pulling out another document. Your mother's will specifies that you will receive her personal belongings, photo albums, jewelry, and a private letter addressed to you. A letter. Chloe let out a hollow laugh. She leaves Angela millions, and I get a letter. The jewelry includes several valuable pieces. Margaret added, I don't care about jewelry, Chloe snapped, slamming her hand against the table. I want what I was promised. I want what I deserve. What you deserve. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. They were quiet, but they filled the room. You visited Mom 3 times in 2 years, I said. 3 times. While I was there every day. She stared at me. I didn't look away. You called me a burden while I was holding her hand through chemotherapy. I continued. So tell me, what exactly did you earn? Silence stretched between us. Margaret cleared her throat slightly. Let's review the total assets, she said. For clarity. I'm contesting all of this, Chloe said suddenly, standing so quickly her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She wasn't thinking clearly. The treatments, the medication. She couldn't have made these decisions rationally. Margaret remained seated, composed. As I've already stated, your mother underwent a formal cognitive evaluation conducted by Dr. Helen Carter, an independent board-certified psychiatrist. She gestured toward the documents. The evaluation confirmed that she was fully competent and understood the implications of every decision. Doctors can be wrong, Chloe muttered. The signing of the will was also recorded. Margaret continued, tapping the USB drive. In that recording, your mother explains each decision in detail. Her gaze remained steady. She also directly addresses the possibility of a legal challenge and outlines why such a challenge would not succeed. Chloe's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Furthermore, Margaret added, the trust and the life insurance policy are not subject to probate. They are separate legal instruments. She paused. They cannot be contested in the way you are suggesting. You have no legal standing to challenge them, Margaret said calmly. There has to be something, Chloe insisted, her voice tightening. If you wish to contest your father's will, you may do so, Margaret replied, but I would strongly advise consulting your own attorney regarding the costs versus the likely outcome. She held Chloe's gaze. As for your mother's arrangements, she anticipated every objection you're raising. She spent 8 years ensuring everything was legally secure. My grandmother spoke then, her voice steady. My daughter didn't do this out of spite, Chloe. She did it because she understood what would happen otherwise. We all did. Chloe turned toward her, anger flashing across her face. You helped her, she said. You helped her hide all of this. You helped her cut me out. I helped her protect her child. My grandmother answered simply, exactly what any mother would do. Chloe opened her mouth, but no words came. Ethan was the first to break. This is insane, he said. Pushing back his chair as he stood, his composure finally cracked. She's a nurse. She barely makes enough to get by, and now she gets over $2 million while we... He stopped. Margaret tilted her head slightly. While you... What? Mr. Brooks. Ethan's expression faltered. He had said too much. My grandmother's voice cut through the silence. You're about to lose your house, aren't you? The words landed like a blade. Chloe went completely still. The failed investment. My grandmother continued. The $400,000 you lost. The notices from the bank. Did you really think we didn't know? Chloe's face drained of color. How would Mom know? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She knew everything. My grandmother replied. The debts. The desperation. She knew you were depending on this inheritance to save you. She paused. That's exactly why she made sure you couldn't touch what she built for Angela. I looked at my sister then. Really looked at her. The designer clothes. The expensive watch. The car parked outside. All of it suddenly felt hollow. A performance. A life built on expectation. And the belief that someone else's money would always be there to catch her. You weren't planning to share anything, I said quietly. You were planning to take everything. Her eyes snapped to mine. Because you needed it, I continued. Because you were already losing everything. I am not losing anything. Chloe shot back. I had a setback. That's all. A setback that this inheritance was supposed to fix. I said. Silence followed. Ethan sank back into his chair, his expression unraveling. You spent your whole life being told you deserved everything, I said softly, and you never stopped to question whether that was true. Chloe didn't respond. She couldn't. For a moment. I want to ask you something. If you were in her position, would you have done anything differently? Because when everything you've built depends on something you were promised, losing it feels like losing everything. Margaret waited until the room settled before speaking again. For the record, she said, I will now summarize the total assets transferred to Angela Hughes. She glanced briefly at her notes. From Eleanor Hughes's estate, the property located on Willow Creek Drive, estimated value $650,000. From the irrevocable trust established 8 years ago, approximately $1.2 million. From the life insurance policy, $500,000. She looked up. Additionally, from Daniel Hughes's estate, 30% of remaining liquid assets, estimated at approximately $24,000. Ethan's breathing had become shallow. Chloe stared at the table, unmoving. The total, Margaret said, her tone precise, is approximately $2.374 million. The numbers seemed to echo in the room. 2.374 million. My mother, who wore the same watch every day, who never spent more than necessary. She had left me everything. A future. A choice. A life I never thought I could have. Chloe made a strange sound. She was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Her face drained of color. She tried to stand. Maybe to argue, maybe to leave. But before she could, her body gave out. Her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. Her head struck the edge of the table on the way down. Ethan shouted her name. Margaret's assistant was already moving, dialing emergency services, checking Chloe's pulse with practiced efficiency. I sat there, frozen, watching my sister lying unconscious on the polished floor of a law office, undone by numbers she could not accept. She's breathing, the assistant said. Pulse is steady, likely a fainting episode. My grandmother's hand tightened around mine. Your mother would be proud of you, she said quietly, not because of the money, but because of who you became, in spite of everything. I couldn't respond. I was still trying to make sense of it all. The paramedics arrived quickly. They checked her vitals, cleaned the small cut on her forehead, and explained it was a sudden drop in blood pressure brought on by shock. Nothing serious. Just her body reacting to something her mind couldn't process. She refused to be taken to the hospital. 20 minutes later, she was back in her chair, pale and unsteady. Ethan hovering beside her as if she might collapse again. She looked at me. You knew, she said, her voice hoarse. You knew about all of this. I didn't, I said, and it was the truth. Not until recently. And even then, I didn't know how much. But you suspected. She pressed. You sat there, pretending you didn't know. I knew Mom loved me. I said evenly. That's all I knew. She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. And she didn't love me? I think she did. I said slowly. But she also saw who you chose to become. Ethan's hand tightened on her shoulder. We should go, he whispered. We need to figure this out. Figure out what she snapped. Her voice cracking. How to pay the mortgage. How to explain to the bank that everything we were counting on is gone. Then she looked at me again. And this time, there was something else in her eyes. Angela. She said, you have to help me. We're family. The word hung there. Family. 3 visits in 2 years. Enjoy figuring things out on your own. Angela. I said, you told me I was nothing. I said quietly, you threw me out of my own home before Mom's funeral flowers had even faded. I stood up. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. I didn't mean it, she said quickly. I was under pressure. The investments. Everything. I said things I shouldn't have. That's not who I am. Then who are you? I asked softly. Because I've known you my entire life, and I've never seen anything different. She flinched. I'm not going to let you end up with nothing. I continued. I'm not cruel, but I'm also not going to fix the consequences of choices you made, while treating me like I didn't matter. "So, that's it," she asked. "You walk away with everything, and I get nothing. You get exactly what you earned." I picked up my bag, the same worn bag I carried through years of school, through long shifts, through every moment I was told I wasn't enough. "You get the results of your choices," I said, "just like I finally get the results of mine." Ethan started to speak, but I raised my hand. "If you need to contact me, go through Margaret," I said. As for anything personal, I looked at Chloe, at the person I had grown up with, at the stranger sitting in front of me. "That's going to take time," I said. "If it ever happens at all, I'm not trying to hurt you," I added quietly. "I'm just finally understanding something Mom tried to teach me." I turned toward the door. "I don't have to accept treatment I would never give to someone else." I paused briefly, without looking back. "She loved you," I said, "but she loved me enough to protect me from you." Then I walked out. My grandmother followed me into the hallway. "Wait," she said gently, catching my arm. "I have something for you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small navy velvet box, worn soft at the edges. "Your mother wanted you to have this," she said. I opened it. Inside was a sapphire ring, the same one my grandmother had worn for as long as I could remember. "Grandma, I can't take this," I whispered. "It was mine." She said softly, "I gave it to your mother on her wedding day, and before she passed, she gave it back to me, so I could give it to you." I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "There's something else you should know," my grandmother said. I looked up at her. "Your mother once planned to leave your father," she said quietly. "Years ago, before you were born." I stared at her. "She stayed because of you," she continued. "Because of both of you. No one knew," she added. "She did what she could, with the life she had. But she always regretted that she couldn't give you a different childhood." My grandmother said softly. Her eyes shimmered, holding back tears. "The trust, the insurance, everything she did," she continued. "That was her way of giving you something she never had. The freedom to walk away from people who don't value you." I pulled her into a hug. This small, steady woman who had stood beside my mother for 8 years, quietly helping her build a future I never knew existed. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," she replied gently. "Just live your life well. That's all your mother ever wanted." Behind us, I could hear Chloe and Ethan leaving, their voices low, strained, unraveling. I didn't turn around. A month later, I was sitting in the office of a financial advisor Margaret had recommended. Her name was Laura Bennett, a woman with decades of experience and none of the polished insincerity I had expected. She slid a document across the desk. "Here's what I suggest," she said. "We keep the trust invested. You withdraw only what you need for living expenses." She pointed to another section. "The insurance funds go into a high-yield account, emergency use, future opportunities, and your student loans," she added, glancing up. "We eliminate those immediately. $40,000? Gone. Just like that. And you keep working." I blinked. "Working, I read your file," she said simply. "You love what you do. Money shouldn't change that. It should just give you options." So I followed her advice. I paid off my loans in one payment, something I had been chipping away at for years. I kept my job at Oak Ridge. Though I switched to day shifts, I no longer needed the extra hours just to stay afloat. I stayed with Melissa for another month while I figured out what to do about the house, because the house wasn't simple. It was the place where I had cared for my mother, the place where I had been thrown out like I didn't belong, The place where Chloe had laughed with a glass of wine while my things sat outside in the rain. But it was also where my mother had planted her roses, where she had tucked me into bed as a child, where she had quietly planned a future for me, piece by piece. I wasn't ready to go back. Not yet. But I wasn't ready to let it go either. Rent it, Melissa suggested one evening. Let it take care of itself while you figure things out. She was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing toward survival. I had time. My mother had given me that. 3 months after the will reading. My grandmother called. Chloe sold the house. She said, I was sitting on my break at work, in the same stairwell where I had once learned my parents were gone. Funny how certain places hold memories like they never leave. How do you know? I asked. It was listed online. She said, and Ethan's social media has been very informative. Her tone was dry. He's already rebranding himself as a victim of financial betrayal. I almost laughed. Almost. Is she okay? I asked. Define okay, my grandmother replied. She's in a small apartment now, still working. But not where she used to. I don't think anyone's inviting her to the same circles anymore. A few months ago, I might have felt satisfaction hearing that. Now, I just felt tired. I don't want anything bad to happen to her. I said quietly, I know. My grandmother replied, that's the difference between you. There was a pause. Did Mom know? I asked. About the debts. The situation she suspected, my grandmother said. And she knew that if there was money within reach, Chloe would take it. Not out of cruelty, but because she was raised to believe it belonged to her. I thought about my sister, alone, her life unraveling, and I thought about the girl she used to be, the one who used to laugh in the backyard, who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. I didn't know where that version of her had gone, but I knew I couldn't bring her back. I'm going to the house this weekend, I said. First time since everything? Do you want me to come with you? I nodded. Even though she couldn't see me, yes, I do. The garden had survived the winter. Not perfectly. Some of the roses were dry, brittle at the edges, but in between them, I saw new growth. Small green shoots pushing through the soil. Life. Stubborn and quiet. Refusing to disappear. My grandmother stood beside me, her arm linked through mine. She planted this the year you were born. She said. I blinked. I didn't know that. She said it was for protection. My grandmother added, for hope, for something good to grow around you. I stepped forward and pushed open the back door. The door opened without resistance. My key worked perfectly now. I had changed the locks weeks ago, quietly reclaiming what had always been mine. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, taking in the silence. This was where I had made my mother tea countless times, where I had stood beside her through fear, through pain, through nights that felt endless. The house felt still. Chloe had left it relatively clean when she moved out, whether it was guilt or simply a lack of time. I didn't know, but my mother was still everywhere. Her recipe card sat neatly in the drawer. Her glasses rested on the nightstand. Her robe still hung in the closet, like she might come back for it at any moment. I walked into her bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. That's when I noticed it. A small photo album I had never seen before. I picked it up slowly. Inside were pictures of me, from the very beginning. My first steps, my first day of school, graduation, moments I barely remembered, all captured carefully on the first page. In her handwriting, it said, for my bravest girl. My grandmother sat beside me. She worked on that for weeks. She said softly, she couldn't sleep during chemo, so she put it together. She said it helped her remember the good things. I held the album against my chest, and for the first time in a long time, I cried, not from grief, but from gratitude. 6 months later, I made a decision I had been putting off for years. I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program. It had always been something I wanted, a way to do more, to help people in a deeper, more meaningful way. But it had never felt possible, not with the cost, not with the life I was trying to hold together. Now, I used part of the trust to cover tuition and books, following the plan my advisor had carefully laid out. The rest remained invested, growing quietly in the background. I continued working at Oak Ridge, shifting to part-time. I wasn't ready to leave the patients who had become such an important part of my life. Melissa and I eventually found an apartment together near the hospital. 2 bedrooms, a small balcony. I started growing roses in pots. She joked that living alone was overrated. I told her sharing rent made more sense. We both knew it was more than that. Every Sunday, my grandmother called. She told me stories about my mother as a child, about who she was before life shaped her into someone quieter, more careful. I recorded those conversations, saving them like pieces of something I didn't want to lose. As for the house, I decided to rent it. A young family moved in. The wife was a nurse from Oak Ridge, her husband kind and steady, their 2 daughters full of energy. The older one asked if she could take care of the garden. I said yes. That year, I said yes to a lot of things, to opportunities, to rest, to the slow, unfamiliar realization that I was worth more than I had been taught to believe. My mother didn't just leave me money. She gave me permission. Permission to believe I deserved a life that wasn't built on sacrifice alone. I've thought a lot about Chloe. Not to excuse her. There is no excuse for the way she treated me. But to understand, she grew up being told she was entitled to everything. She didn't have to earn it. The world was already hers. So she never learned what it meant to truly value something, or someone. People call it entitlement, the belief that you deserve without effort. It isn't something you're born with. It's something you're taught. And once it takes hold, it's almost impossible to unlearn, because letting it go means facing the possibility that you were never as special as you were told. Have you ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside by the very people who were supposed to love you most? If this story feels even a little familiar, I'd really like to hear yours. Share your experience in the comments, not just to be heard, but to connect. You never know who might read your story and feel less alone because of it. Sometimes, healing begins when we finally speak our truth. There was a moment in my life when I finally understood something I had spent years questioning, not my worth, but the way I had been taught to see it. I used to believe that love meant enduring everything, staying silent, and accepting less just to keep the peace. But this journey showed me that real love does not diminish you, and real family does not make you feel invisible. What I learned is this: showing up, caring deeply, and choosing kindness are never weaknesses. They are strengths. But those strengths must also come with boundaries, because if you don't protect your value, someone else will define it for you, and they won't always be fair. My mother didn't just leave me a future. She gave me clarity. She showed me that I deserved more, even when no one else said it out loud. And maybe that's the most powerful lesson of all, that sometimes the people who truly love us prepare us for a life where we no longer have to beg to be seen. If this story touched you, I hope you'll carry something from it into your own life. And if you've ever felt the same, don't stay silent. Your story matters more than you think. Subscribe to the channel to be part of a community that shares, listens, and grows together. Leave a comment. like, and share this video so someone else can feel less alone today. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.
Welcome to Family Confessions. Our stories go beyond entertainment, helping viewers recognize toxic behaviors, understand boundaries, and reflect on their relationships, while reinforcing self-worth and the strength to heal and move forward. Each video follows a structured workflow ensuring quality and value for our audience. Thank you for being here.